All right, we are back. The 2026 WSL Championship Tour is moving through the GWM Aussie Treble with the completion of stop number 2, the Western Australia Margaret River Pro, won by Lakey Peterson and George Pittar. Congrats to both of them. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Western Australia's own Chris Binns. Binnsy, so stoked to have you on the episode today. It's definitely worth having you back for a bit of a deeper dive into your own professional life in surfing. But for listeners out there who might not be familiar with you, what's the Cliff Notes version of the background on Chris Binns?
It's funny. I think I have to do a bit more justification than say a world champion like Harrison Roach as to why I'm here. So I was born in Europe, grew up in Norway. I was obsessed with skiing as a little kid. We moved to Australia and I figured if I couldn't ski anymore, then I'd clearly have to become a surfer. But my parents not only moved to the wave-starved barren desert of Perth, but they moved to the hills of Perth, an hour inland. So early on, I realised that my surfing was going to be more subscribing to the extracurriculars. I read every page of Surfing Life magazine and Waves magazine for 10, 15 years straight until I started writing for Surfing Life. Grew up on a diet of Taylor Steele, Jack McCoy, Sonny Miller, and bits and pieces of other movies. And yeah, at uni, I started writing for university newspapers and newsletters and stuff, and that led to writing freelance for Stab. And that was a happy couple of years while I was traveling in my 20s before I somehow landed a full-time job at Surfing Life magazine. So I moved to the Gold Coast. I spent 7 years there. It was the heyday of the surf industry. It was pretty special. Print was booming as well. I learned from guys like Nick Carroll and Graham Murdoch, like doyens of the industry. I worked alongside photographers like Andrew Shield and Ted Grambo. Trent Mitchell was our photo editor. Kai Neville was our in-house DVD producer, and it was it was a pretty amazing time to step into it. I felt like the guy out of Almost Famous. As a complete outsider, I just couldn't believe it. I had so many pinch yourself moments. And I'm a complete sports nerd. I try to bring like a Bill Simmons kind of vibe to how I go about it. Not necessarily an authority, but a fan and a lover of surfing. And hopefully that's landed with a few people because it's sort of translated in all sorts of crazy opportunities that have opened up. I started commentating events while I was at Surfing Life, and that was when, the junior series in Australia was like Owen Wright, Julian Wilson, Matt Wilkinson, Mitch Colborne, like all these guys. And I felt like my career kind of grew up with them. And then, they sort of got onto the CT around the same time that I started really commentating a lot of events. When I wrapped up after being the editor at Surfing Life I was there for 7 years. I was the editor-in-chief for the last 3.5. I went to Bali to commentate the Rip Curl Cup and never left. Spent the next 7 years there as a base, coming and going to events all over the world. That led, I was freelancing for Red Bull, came up with no contests, like commentated Red Bull Airborne and Red Bull Cape Fear, and had all these just amazing experiences open up. I've been the beach commentator at Margaret River for, I think this was my 10th event just gone, and I've probably done 30 all up, including Bells and the Gold Coast Pro and Portugal and Rottnest and the whole Aussie quaddie back in that weird COVID era. So it's been really cool. And then the pandemic came along, and I was building a house in Yallingup right here in WA, and that brought me home from Indonesia, and sliding doors. All of a sudden now I'm married with a mortgage and a little boy, and life's pretty good. And the week just gone is like my annual Christmas party where the whole world comes to town, and I get to play host and catch up with people, and just remind myself of how much I just love everything that comes with this whole surfing circus.
A rare success story, right? You're able to get married, have a kid, you're well adjusted. And it's funny, like someone sent me a photo from, I think it was like 2008, so almost 20 years ago, and it was the media crew in Tahiti, and it's you and me. We look great, by the way. Jake Howard, Nick Carroll, is like 8 of us, but it was of a time, right? Like everything's cyclical. We have over the knee board shorts, like loose tank tops. We were in good form, but it reminded me. I'm like, I've known Chris Binns for almost 2 decades now, and man, I'm stoked to be we're still doing it. I'm really stoked to be having this conversation.
Yeah, that's a better photo than, I'm sure some of the others that are kicking around. But I was telling someone about those media days. We used to have this like press center where you'd meet the guys from American magazines or European magazines, and there'd be like just this meeting of the minds, and like photographers who you'd have no business crossing paths with. You're like, oh, you're Jeff Flint. Nice to meet you. Like, and you'd meet Trav Ferre and, become good friends with guys like Jimmy Kane and Taylor Paul. And you'd all sit there watching on the one TV in the corner and filing your reports, and, people would be printing stuff out. It was a different era, but it was really special to be a part of back then for sure.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I'm going to bring you back for a full episode in the future if we can persuade you, but we'll see how this one goes first and see if you want to come back. But on that note, the Western Australia Margaret River Pro second stop on the season. First segment is winners and losers from WA, excuse me. And for new listeners out there, these are strictly subjective picks from Binnsy and myself. They're not off the results necessarily. What we're trying to do is kind of pick at the stories behind the results a little bit. And Binnsy, balls to you, man. Kick us off. What's the first loser coming out of Margaret River? Loser in air quotes there.
Starting off with the loser is that's rough.
It's tough, but then, this segment's like, do you want to end with the winner? It's tough.
Okay, so I'm going to go with the 8 poor bastards who, sorry, can I say that?
You can
8
swear.
Unlucky surfers who start in the opening round on the men's side of the draw. 2 events in, and Liam O'Brien is the only one of them who's made it past round 2 and graduated to round 3. It's hard enough starting as a low seed to begin with, but, adding that extra round is just brutal. And I did an interview with Graham Stapleberg last year where I saw this round and was like, does this mean down the track we'll be a top 30 and there'll be 2 wild cards because that's how you get rid of it? And maybe if the trend continues, that'll kind of have to be a non-negotiable because it seems really unfair. I also feel, spare a thought for Callum Robson. He would have been the 28th seed, and then Gabby came back from injury, Gabriel Medina, seeded 13th. So Carissa and Steph came back from sabbaticals, so they came in as low seeds, whereas Gabby came back from an injury, so he kept his seeding, which was 13th at the time he bowed out. That knocked Callum down to 29th, which saw him move into that round. And after 2 events, he's had 2 dead lasts, and he's tied for dead last with Oscar Berry, who's also gone out straight sets twice. It's rough.
It's a brutal part of the new format. Of course, we got rid of the non-elimination rounds, so these are all head-to-head elimination. And on the women's side, it works a bit better with the numbers of 24. You seed the top 8, the bottom 16 are in that opening round and head-to-head. But on the men's side, because it's a 36 surfer draw, as you pointed out, we've got these 8 surfers, these 4 heats, and it's a bit of a play-in to get to the round of 32. And yeah, we'll see what happens in the future. I think on the side of arguing to keep it, it doesn't seem like anyone's having a great time in that round. But of course, the option is like, well, then you might not actually be on tour. But yeah, it's a fair first loser. First loser for me, less coming out of WA, but more so out of the first 2 events out of the GWM Aussie Treble this is going to sound a bit funny, but anyone that has won a women's world title before 2024. Oddly specific, yes. Accurate, though, also yes. Heading into this week's event in Snapper Rocks, we currently have 4 women's world champions holding a collective 16 world titles, and they're all sitting below 8th on the CT rankings. You got 5-time women's world champion Carissa Moore at 9th, 2023 women's world champ Caroline Margs at 10th. Both of them, they did put up quarterfinal finishes in WA. 2-time women's world champ Tyler Wright, she's out with injury at the moment, and sitting 19th. And then the real shocker for me, returning 8-time women's world champion Steph Gilmore. She's currently ranked 23rd, bottom of the rankings. And we do have recent women's world champs. You got 2024's Katie Simmers and reigning world champ Molly Picklum. They're sitting at 5th and 3rd respectively. Small sample size, but potentially the beginning of maybe a broader data point about generational shifts happening in women's surfing. So, long season to go at Snapper Rocks up next, but I'd say the pressure's on for some of these surfers.
Yeah, I agree. I've got a rebuttal coming to that.
Go for it. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm saving it. So,
all right. Who's your next loser then?
It is a very small sample size, and it's really hard with the conditions that we've seen across these first 2 events to read too much into it, which brings me to my second loser. And it hurts to say this, but Ethan Ewing's rough start to the year has only slightly improved. I think the first episode of Stab in the Dark coming out right before Bells saw everyone declare him world champ and wonder why we weren't just going to call the season off and save ourselves a whole heap of hassle and give him the trophy. Since then, he hasn't had a wave over a 6. He surfed 4 heats for 2 wins, and he sits 13th, and I really hope that he's not feeling this kind of pressure.
Right.
It's not his surfing. We all know that.
Right, yeah.
I saw Ethan and Taj surfing a wave just down the road from home during the week-long lay day, and all the guys I know who were coming out of the water just had their eyes bulging out of their heads, just going, I've never seen anything like that. Like, this guy's amazing. Hopefully the wonky waves of these first 2 events and, being a little bit starved of opportunity, coming to Queensland his home state can get his campaign up and running. It's a funny one for Ethan because this will only be his 3rd Gold Coast pro. We first saw him. The first ever wave he caught on the CT was way back in 2017 as a rookie, and it was a 9, 9.1 on his first ever wave on the CT. He just tore Snapper apart, couldn't get a second score, got knocked out in the next round, and he sort of didn't get through a heat until probably mid-year. J-Bay had to go back, requalify, and we've just been waiting for the big push, and maybe this time at the peak of his game, good forecast for Snapper, home state. Let's just see if some magic happens for Ethan on the Goldie. I really hope it does.
It's a great one, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, those forecasts for the first 2 events are pretty rough, and I in my brain I try to balance it out with like how dominant I think Ethan should be, pretty much everywhere. But you pointed out the Stab in the Dark. I think there's 2 episodes out now, and Sam McIntosh and I will text every now and then, and I'm like, this has got to be like the best surfing that's ever gone down in, well, I guess it's 11 seasons now if we're going to count Kelly as 10, but like I said this might be the closest you've had a participant in this show to like the peak form they've ever been. Anyway, I'm with you. The forecast, knock on wood, looks all right for Snapper so far, and if it holds, hopefully that dominance kind of shows. Second loser for me. Oh, no, please.
Sorry, Ethan really picked that Channel Islands quickly, huh?
I guess, yeah. Although, like, it is funny because it's. I guess I saw some footage before it came out, but then it's all confirmed in the first 2 episodes. I'm like, he looks awesome on every board. Like, there's not one that you're like, I don't know about that one. He surfs so well. But for someone who's pretty economical with his words, I'm hanging on like everything he has to say about boards and how he views them perform. Like, he's really articulate and insightful with how he kind of breaks down the kind of boards he wants and the weight he wants and the rails he wants to do different things, and how he kind of pushes, different parts of his surfing to really test his equipment. I've really been enjoying it. So everyone check that out if you haven't already. But
also on that, like, he's economical with his words. It's great, but he's definitely not boring. I think that's this massive. It's like a lazy way of going about it. I remember pushing for an interview with him once, and the crew I was pitching it to were like, you reckon you'll get anything out of him? And I was like, hang on, he's sitting second in the world right now. Why am I having to pitch this to you? And we sat down and we had a great chat. I asked him plenty of questions that, I wanted answers for, and he was forthright and gave me all the chat, but he just doesn't volunteer it. You have to ask him, you have to engage with him, and good on him. He doesn't suffer fools.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I wouldn't if I had a rig like that either. He'd come and talk to me.
It's a great point. Second loser for me coming out of WA, unfortunately, it's the locals, I think. We had wild cards, Jacob Wilcox and Jack Thomas. They did win their opening round heats against Matthias Hurdy and Oscar Berry, respectively, but went down in the round of 32. World title contender, Jack Robinson, won his round of 32 heat against rookie Cali Vost, but lost in the round of 16 against Gabby Medina. That is a tough draw. On the women's side, Bronte McCauley goes down the opening round to Sophie McCulloch. So conditions not great, but tough times for WA surfers in WA this season. Although I will say, bright spot, I didn't get to enjoy your beach commentary, Binnsy, but I also quite enjoyed Taj on the broadcast. More of him would be more than welcome from my perspective.
Oh, totally agree. And coaching, he was everywhere. He was free surfing with Ethan. He was coaching Gabrielle O'Brien. He was turning up in the booth. He was. He had a pep in his step. It was great. And it wasn't all bad news for the locals. Like, Jack Thomas surfed one hell of a heat in the first round. Jacob, rock solid as ever. Bronte just got caught short. She needed a tiny score at the end of her heat. And then there was a WA Legends heat. There was Dave McCauley, Claire Bevilacqua, and Jacob Wilcox. The crowd all hung around and loved it. Absolutely lapped it up. It was D-Mac's first ever time with jet ski assist.
He was saying that.
He was beside himself. He couldn't believe it.
All right, well, let's round out the losers. We got one more each. Who have you got for your third one, Chris?
This is a funny one, but I think we might have found our ceiling for the amount of heats you can run in a day.
Sure, fair.
We kicked off the event. The forecast wasn't looking great, but day one was. So we had to try and capitalise on it. And we did so by running 28 overlapping 40-minute heats. And we sent home 28 of the 60 surfers on the first day of the window, and it was too much. It was great, but I think so much of the fine print got lost. Like, everyone was cooked afterwards. You'd run into someone at the cafe or the supermarket or whatever, and you didn't know if they'd won or lost. You didn't know how to approach that conversation. The highlights were like, how do you distill down all of that action? There were moments where, some tension simmered over purely. I think everyone was just stressed and running around, and I found that the 46-minute heat versus the 40 for the overlapping, the 46 gives you that little bit more breathing space. When it's 40 minutes and it's a 20-minute changeover, everything just happens so fast that it's almost like a pile up on the freeway where it all just kind of crescendos and piles up on each other. It was a lot. The day we ran after that was 16 heats. It was 46 minutes overlapping. And even though the conditions weren't as good, I think that felt like the sweet spot, like a round of men, a round of women, a little bit more breathing room. Like, Margaret River is awesome for 4-man heats. It was like, I loved it when it was a QS years ago and there was 200 guys in town, and there weren't the luxury of the waiting periods, and you're running in 10-foot onshore conditions. You're running in, 2-foot offshore. there's just 4 people in the water. There's lots of waves being caught. And on the CT, once priority gets involved, and especially at Margaret's when you have big period swells and it can be slow, it just can be really, really drawn out. But when you've got 4 surfers in the water and you've got guys under priority who aren't afraid to sneak inside and catch this one, have a roll of the dice on that one, it's fantastic. But yeah, I think the 2 days really contrasted. Even though the surf wasn't as good, that 16 heat day, that was the sweet spot for me.
Good to know. I was thinking of that too, like with the removal of the non-elimination round and knowing that the reason they wanted to push a bunch of heats through early on was that not only were the conditions going to get rough, but there was quite a big storm front moving through and kind of lasted all the way up until just that final day of the window. And I was thinking, well, no one wants to leave early. No one wants to lose early. But if you do lose early, you do get to go to the Gold Coast and kind of get warmed up in a way. So I guess as far as consolation prizes go, some of the surfers are like, well, Snapper's been pumping for about a month and I'll reset on the East Coast then. Third loser for me coming out of WA was actually the 2026 CT rookie class on both sides. Again, early days, of course, and we have to factor in what we've been talking about, that new event format without the non-elimination round. But as a recording, we haven't had a single rookie crack the quarterfinals yet. Not overly surprising, right? The first 2 venues we've been talking about had tricky forecasts. And then I think the second factor that goes into this, and one that gets under-discussed, in my opinion, is sort of this immutable law of the championship tour, and that everyone is so good, right? We've seen it. You and I have probably seen it up close for a couple decades now. It's like the hype machine around some of these kids, when they're on the QS, when they're on the CS, when they're filming, video edits, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, the second this person gets onto the CT, they're going to win the world title. And the speed and the power and like the competitive savvy and the ability of that CT class. You see it in other sports too. It's like everyone talks about it. They're like, the game is so much faster at the elite level, and it really is. That said, a lot of talent in this year's rookie class, and fingers crossed on the forecast at Snapper, but we might be due for someone to make a dent later in the draw in the next couple of events.
On that note, like Bells and Margaret's are 2 of the most specific waves where experience counts so highly. Like if you dropped the top 34 and the top 22 at a beach break, all bets are off. They'll figure it out. But these are such specific playing fields that knowledge base just has to be built up. That's where the coaches are so important at Margaret River. You walk up the staircase and you see the plaques, and it's all the coaches. It's Tommy Witts and it's Snake and it's Taj, and it's like guys who've won, Chris Gallagher, like guys who've won there in the past, because it's that kind of wave where not only do you need to be a good surfer, but you need to figure it out. And it's a tough one for a rookie, especially second event. You come up against a veteran and they can play old guy ball and just walk around and be in the right spot, and you wonder why you're getting your ass kicked.
It's a great point. Well, we've got the medicine out of the way, Binnsy. Let's move to the winners. Who you got first winner coming out of WA?
Okay, my first winner, I'm going to go a little bit past the obvious. It's the North Stain Board Riders, which is George Pittar's Board Riders Club in Manly in Sydney. They were having a club round on Sunday, and I'm not sure if you've seen the video, but that moment of a couple of hundred people jammed under a couple of tents at their local beach, crowded around a laptop, while there's a heat going on in the water and there's someone still commentating the action out there, but also commentating what's on the screen, and just the outpouring of emotion, and there's kids in rashies, and George is their new hero. And like, as an Australian surfer, like the board riders culture, that single shot is everything that's great about surfing in Australia. And I just loved that whole scene played out. And guys like Dayan Neve, who was on the CT, they're in the tent, they're probably judging, and they've probably just surfed over 35s Masters heat, and they're just going mad. And then there's a little 5-year-old kid in a massive rashie tied in a knot, and he's crying too. Like, it's the best.
It's cool. The beach commentators are calling out George's scores too for the people in the water. It's probably awesome. So.
Yeah.
Well, man, mind meld on this one. I'm similar for the first winner for me. Obvious one, but maybe for less obvious reasons, not unlike yourself. But yeah, I mean, event winner, current world number 2, George Pittar. And yes, George has been a long time lineup podcast favorite. Yes, he's the only non-Brazilian in the current top 5. Yes, he won his first CT event over the weekend. All good data points. But the reason he's a big winner for me is a continuation of what I think Harris and I talked about a couple weeks ago. It might have been on one of the news updates. Either way, just take a look at the surfers he's had to face in 2026. We talked about Ethan Ewing. George beat Ethan Ewing at Winky Pop before losing a close one to the eventual event winner, Miguel Pupo. And in Western Australia, round 2 over 2-time world champion Felipe Toledo, round 3 over an on-fire Leonardo Fioravanti, quarterfinals over reigning men's world champion Iago Dora, semifinals over 2019 world champion Italo Ferreira, and then the finals win over 3-time world champion Gabriel Medina. So if George Pittar is a dragon slayer, the big skulls mounted over his fireplace are got to be like, it has to be the most potent opponents anyone's ever had to like start a season, and that's just awesome. Good for him, man. That's why he's my first big winner.
Oh yeah, murderer's row. That is unbelievable. And then the one non-world champ he beat, Leonardo Fioravanti. We were saying that's arguably one of the most handsome heats of all time. Like, those two guys, they could be on stamps, they could be on coins, like.
Couple of F1 drivers, maybe. That's what.
In the opening round, we had maybe the best looking heat of all time with Matthias Herdy and Jack Thomas. But then those two guys, that was like two statesmen. They needed to be in suits, not wetsuits.
Who you got for your second winner, Binnsy?
My second winner. Well, this is my rebuttal to your earlier call about the world champs.
All right, let's hear it.
For mine, Carissa Moore was one of the big winners at Margaret River this year.
She looked awesome.
Yeah, she was, I guess, a kind of defending champ, because the last time she was there in 2023, she won. And she knocked out the actual defending champ in Isabella Nichols. And she pushed Katie Simmers all the way in a heat that a lot of people could have, a lot of people saw could have gone the other way.
Sure.
And there's... you can't not love Carissa. She's always worn her heart on her sleeve, and she's always taken so much pride in surfing, not just for herself, but to motivate and inspire other people. And in the past, that might have been young girls and women with a More Aloha Foundation. But this time it seems like she's really trying to prove that mums can do it. And she's not just making up the numbers. Something you've seen in Margaret River that maybe a lot of the viewers won't is that we beach commentators do post-heat interviews with the surfers on the boardwalk in front of the crowd. And it's really cool. It's really special. It's a lot more informal than the post-heats in front of the glass. And surfers over the years have developed these amazing relationships with the crowd because they get to talk to the crowd. And people might not even suspect, like Jadson Andre or Courtney Conlog and Connor Coffin, have all been big crowd favourites over the years just because they get to talk to the crowd and engage with the crowd, and they've come back for years and years and years. And you can tell that their love for the region is genuine. But this year, and we also try to grab some of the losers if you feel like they're going to be fine to have a chat, and they generally are once you let them cool off and whatnot. But I saw this year that Carissa she took that loss to Katie hard, and I sort of, as she walked past, hey, Riss, do you want to say something to the crowd? Because you also never know with these kind of champions when the last time will be. And Carissa went, yeah, sure. And my first question, I was like, look, this is really weird, but I really enjoyed seeing you cry just then, because it shows that this means something to you. And she was like, yeah, I don't want to just make up the numbers. I'm here to compete. I'm bummed that I lost. I want to have a crack at this. And her surfing looked, she pushed Katie. Katie, the first wave, really put her head down, and it wasn't like a argy-bargy situation, but Katie made it clear that she wanted the inside. She wanted that first wave. And I said that to Carissa. I was like, how does that make you feel? And she's like, oh, great. I don't want anyone giving me an easy ride. Like, it's more of a sign of respect when people want to battle me. And everything she's doing this year is wicked. She's not making up the numbers. Her surfing is as good as ever. She's throwing buckets, and it's just so great to see her back on tour. And she's surfing with a bigger purpose, and it's cool. So she's a winner for mine. You can get rid of that one from earlier.
You know what? Accepted. We will expunge my prior loser. It's a great one too. And like she and I talked before the season on the podcast, and I always love talking to her. And she highlighted something interesting. Of course, she was a little bit, I wouldn't say guarded, but she was a little bit like, well, I don't know how it's going to go. I hope it goes really well. But she's like, I've never done this before with a family, and I've never done this post motherhood. But one of the things she was talking about was how being a mom has reset her perspective on everything. And she's like, of course, I have a reason to go out there. I have a reason to go win. But in the past, when I'd get in my head too much, I'd come in. Now I come in from even a training session, and it's like my daughter's there, right? And I didn't say it at the time, but I thought it. I'm like, this could be the most dangerous version of Carissa, where it's she has this huge perspective realignment because she's a parent now, and it's if that helps her get out of her own head and be less of her own worst critic, she could be unbeatable. So I'm with you. She surfed awesome. I can't wait to see her the rest of the season. Second winner for me coming out of WA is another multi-time world champion, Gabriel Medina, 3-time world champ. He is back this season. He took a sabbatical in 2022. In 2023, 2024, he had near misses on the WSL final, so we didn't get to see him in the finals compete for a world title. 2025, he goes down early with a pectoral injury. I would argue he's probably the most famous surfer on the planet. He's achieved a mind-blowing amount in only 32 years on the planet, and in a way, he doesn't have to be here from, I think, a career perspective, but he is. And I know it's only 2 events, and I know the conditions weren't great, but I don't think we've ever seen him surf better. Which is saying a lot. He is so calm, and he is so powerful, and 3rd at Bells Beach, runner-up in WA. He's got the yellow leader jersey heading into snapper, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last time the jersey changes hands all season. He just looks better and better. I don't know what your take on it was on the ground over there, but I've just been really impressed.
Yeah, I was going to say with Gabriel, more specifically for here in WA, there's a lot of people who turn up at Margaret River looking like they've already lost, or not looking to love the place, or finding reasons that the wave doesn't agree with them. And Gabby was one of them for a long time. And it's a tough, tricky wave. It's, like Sunset in Hawaii, where some people just never get their head around it. And, Steph Gilmore and Kelly Slater, through all their years of dominance, have never won at Margaret River. Mick Fanning won here way back in the day when it was a QS, but he was pretty vocal about not being a massive fan of Mainbreak, and Gabby was one of them for a long, long time, and then he shouldn't have been. He's built for the wave. He has the big thunder thighs and the solid rump, and he's got his cabbie anchors that are voluminous, huge boaty surfboards with baseball bat rails that are kind of built for the conditions to begin with. And And then something clicked, and he won Rottnest in 2021, and then he won here in 2023, and now he is terrifying out there, and he just loves coming off the bottom and destroying that first bowl, and he just looks so good out there. Like his heats are magnetic; you can't take your eyes off him, and I just love the fact that he turned that around, whereas plenty of other surfers have given up on the place. I mean, I can see why. You lose in Margaret River, especially if you're from Brazil. It's not just you've got 40 hours of flying to get home. You've got a 3-hour drive to the airport. So that's like 2 days of your life to think about how much the wave conspired against you and how it was cold and, you get deep and dark when you're on planes by yourself. And he had that for like 5-10 years, this place. And then finally he's cracked the code, and now he rocks up and he's like rock starring around, and the Groms here all love him. And he posts free surf clips from like the waves that some of the Groms surf over here that have never been filmed in their life. And they're just like, what? That's Suez. What's he doing out there? That's sick. And he's got that vibe around him now. And he's done a complete 180 in the eyes of the crowd here, and obviously with his own take on the place as well. And it's awesome to see. I love that we've got the Dark Prince back. He's the best.
I love it. Who's your last winner coming out of WA, Binns?
My last winner. Okay, I'm going to say it's the media cut victims of years gone by, who rewrote their Margaret River memories this time with fresher, happier material. This place has been funeral vibes for the last 4 years. I know that the WA government wanted the cut event because of the press that came with it, but that first year, 2022, when the cut first came down, it was the saddest day of sport I've ever been a part of. There were tears everywhere, and people were inconsolable, and it was the end of, people were talking about it's the end of their career. For a guy like Connor Coffin, he went from the top 5 to missing the cut to free surfing, just like that. So this year it was great. Obviously, George Pittar won after getting cut last year. Lakey Peterson and Luana Silva, so both this year's women's finalists, they got cut at Margaret River 2 years ago. And the Pupo brothers they've living in some kind of dystopian post-cut, post-traumatic syndrome disorder, the stress disorder, like the last few years, like not just the nightmare in 2024 where Sammy knocked out Miggy, kicked him off tour, and then kept surfing all the way to the quarters to just miss out by a spot himself. But I think that's the last 3 years Sammy got knocked off mid-year, and then this year it was like you could see these weights off people's shoulders and they could surf with a bit less pressure, and huge turnaround in performance from a lot of those crew. So it was, I had an interview with Sammy and I was like, I hope you don't hate Margaret River. And he goes, no, I don't hold it against the place. It was, the system. It's not this place at all. I love this place. And his performances showed this week. So that was cool.
It's a good point. I just thinking back to your point on, the WA government, wow, there's a lot of action, a lot of drama, a lot of narrative, a lot of attention because we've got the cut event. But then, of course, a big part of it is the actual athletes are this is a nightmare point of the season. Doesn't matter where, but it's that's what we're associating it with. And we have a version of the cut, maybe we call it the snip, later in the year. People are off tour for a couple events but then come back for a redemption at Pipe. But that's a good one. I like those surfers that have sort of slayed their demons a little bit in WA. And I guess
also on that that first cut in 2022, just that one day, like the steps were just brutal. You didn't want to make eye contact with people because they're walking up the stairs with towels over their heads and there's tears flying everywhere. And then all the crew that got cut went straight to snapper, and it was 4-foot pumping tubes for the entirety of that first Challenger Series event. And I think that was the best medicine to soften the blow of the cut, because all of a sudden these crew realised, a bit like Carissa having a baby, things get put in perspective pretty quick, that your life's not that bad. You're still surfing, pumping waves for a living, which was great. And the anguish of 2022, it never reached those heights again in the following years. But yeah, this year, it definitely, there was a little bit of a dark cloud that just drifted off with the sea breeze, which was nice.
Fair enough. Well, third winner for me coming out of WA, and we're going to dive a bit further into this in the next section, but it's the crew from Channel Island Surfboards. It's lead shaper Britt Merrick, team manager Brent Power, and the rest of the team there. They had both the men's and women's winners in WA. They had George Pittar and Lakey Peterson. And they vault to the top of the Surfboard Empire CT Shaper rankings presented by VEA. Lost Surfboard's team has been so dominant the last few years. They've gone back to back to back on CT Shaper of the Year titles. And then the field, with DHD, JS, Sharp Eye, and others, it's never been more competitive than it has this year. But big congrats to CI for the sweep out west. And we'll see what happens, in the next few events here.
I've got a bonus winner.
Oh, hit me.
I just want to mention Yago Dora. He had a little skirmish with Jacob Wilcox. I thought that was awesome in the water. Went a little bit over the top back on land, but he handled himself like such a pro in all of his interviews and all of his interactions around the event, around town afterwards. At the invite of the Wilcox family, he went over to their house the next day and they broke their bread. And Jacob and Yago are two of the best goofy footers in the world. They're both really good humans. And it felt a bit awkward for people who are around there. You're like, stop it, you guys. And you know what? He shook it off. He went to Bali for 4 days during that week of lay days. Went surfed Uluwatu for a few days, thawed out, came back with a bit of an Indo glow. Looked amazing surfing. It took a buzzer beater from George Pittar to knock him out. But yeah, I think the world title sits well with him. He's wearing the crown beautifully. He's got aura, as the Groms would love to say.
I love the bonus one. That's a great call. This was excellent. One of the best winners and losers we've ever done. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk more surfboards. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Proden here with Chris Binns. Binnsy, it is time to talk about surfboards. CT Shaper rankings we've been running since 2023. It is a combined ranking of men's and women's performances on the boards of the world's best CT Shapers. As we mentioned in the opening segment, Matt Biolis and Lost Surfboards have gone back to back to back with 3 consecutive CT Shaper rankings titles. We've tweaked the formula slightly this year compared to previous years. CT Shaper rankings, we continue to rank all CT Shapers across all CT events this season. The Shapers, they continue to get points from their surfers at each CT event for quarterfinal or better placings. But this year we're capping it at 2 results max per board program per event. So board builders, CT Shaper rankings results, they can come from top 2 men's, top 2 women's, or one of each, again, quarterfinals or better placings. And just for anyone out there that's new to this, we have ran this exact formula across the 3 previous years, and Lost still wins each season, but the competition is much tighter. We're seeing it's much tighter this year already. Big wind up. So let's get to the Surfboard Empire CT Shaper rankings presented by VEA from Western Australia. Binnsy, you're unquestionably a well-traveled surfer. For folks that haven't had the pleasure of enjoying the Margaret River region, what kind of boards do people tend to opt for out at main break? And how does that wave kind of compare with other places you've been in the world?
Well, the local lords are out there on 7.6s and, that kind of deal. But just think, tending towards your Hawaiian spec. So an extra inch or two of length, a bit more volume, definitely heavier glass, not just to counter breakage, but also just to mow through wind and chop. It is windy and bumpy, and you want plenty of backups in case of breakage because that is very common as well. I know anytime someone of a larger stature leaves a board behind and I get my hands on it, they break like that over here. So, yeah, they're here for a good time, not a long time. And generally PUs, and then just a thick leash or a longer leash. Any 6 foot leash over here on a big day, you come in and it's 7 or 8 foot long. So, I don't know what Claire Bevilacqua was thinking in the Legends heat. She snapped 2 leashes. I was like, Claire, come on. You of all people should know better. But, I
think Jess Starling was saying on the finals day, I think she was talking about, Sawyer Lindblad and how, she was out there and she said, man, every heat that she'd come into basically up until the final stage, she's just coming and going, just getting my ass kicked out there. Like, it's so big and it's so raw, and it's, you got to kind of see a lot of the equipment come by the staircase. Would you say most of the surfers were surfing, step ups even on kind of the cleaner days?
Yeah, inch or two. You sort of can't. It's better to be bigger than shorter. Sure. You don't want to be under, because the earlier you can get in, the better. And there's just, there's big chops moving around, and it is a very shifty lineup. And it's sometimes you need to sacrifice a bit of performance just for survival and entry into a wave.
Fair enough. Well, we'll run through the top 5 and then we can kind of pick apart anything that stood out to us. We mentioned Channel Islands. They're currently number 1 spot on the backs of double wins, Lakey Peterson first, George Pittar first. I will call something out, and that is that George Pittar at Bell's and then again at Margaret River has been riding a relatively new model from Channel Islands called the Goldie. Now, the Goldie I first came across because it was Baron Mamiya's board at Pipeline. So when he was riding it out at Bell's and Winky Pop, I went, oh, look, I'm a civilian when it comes to understanding surfboards, more or less. But I'm like, it seems odd that model would work so well in like diametrically opposed kind of waves. And then he obviously rode it to great effect in WA. So I did ask Britt, I'm like, what's the deal here? And I will read from my phone here because I think this is good content. He goes, for several years now, we've been working on rockers and designs that translate across a wide range of waves. It's been a very concerted effort on my part. Yes, the Goldie was a barrel board, but I pretty soon figured out that with a few tweaks, it could be even better. So I've been tweaking it over the last year and it's been working. But no, I don't think it is very common for boards to work at places like Pipeline and Bell's. But I've always believed that a really good rocker is a really good rocker, period. And you can design around it to give it reach. So words from the big man himself on that. Any thoughts on that, Binnsy, in terms of boards being able to work out at Pipe as well as Bell's Beach as well as Margaret River?
Well, I'm just wondering whether John rides a Ghost out at Pipe.
That's a good question.
I know he's ridden them at Haleiwa and that kind of place, but yeah, there's just so much water moving around that you want to get in, so the volume helps. If it's a little bit shorter and wider, but with that volume, then, maybe that gets through. But that Goldie of George Pittar's it looked really good. And I would imagine he'll keep that thing on ice and take it straight to snapper. Like, there's no reason why it's not going to work for him there too. The way he was, whipping through those arcs on that board, hot knife through butter, all the cliches, it was pretty impressive.
Looked pretty good. Well, rounding out the rest of the current top 5 on the Surfboard Empire CT Shaper rankings presented by Vea, we got 3-time CT Shaper of the Year, Lost Surfboards at number 2. At number 3, Darren Hanley is vaulted over his Gold Coast stablemate JS, who's at number 4, and then Sharp Eye at number 5. On keeping boards on ice, I noticed that Sammy Pupo on the JS has been riding what I think is maybe the same board all season long in his heats. And I think someone was even commenting on some of the bigger days in the earlier rounds that at main break, he was one of the only surfers that was kind of opting for that short board. But I feel like even watching him at Winky Pop, like him and George, they have similar weapons. Like they're so fast and their fast twitch muscles seem to move very similarly. I don't know if you noticed that with Sammy Pupo kind of riding a shorter board out at main break, where most civilians like myself would be running for the hills or like a huge board. He's out there on probably his 5'11", just like lighting the place up.
Yeah, Sammy and George had some really similar waves through the event. Just that top turn arc where they wrench their neck around so hard, and you can just see the board bite on the rail and just accelerate through that turn super quick. And then they come out, and those turns, they put them on display on the final day, and we saw it at Winky as well, were just like kind of cut above stuff. That was when you started looking at George going, oh, hang on. Yeah. There's something going on here. And we've seen it with Sammy. Like, he's won 4 Challenger Series events, and he's been cut mid-year 3 times. Like, he's kind of been in that purgatory of like, he's too good for the Challenger Series, hasn't quite found his groove on the CT. But now with the hangman's noose of the mid-year cut being taken away, and Miguel having, the amazing start that he's had, those two have got a real thing going on at the moment, and expect it to keep going on the Gold Coast. Like, JS he was at Bell's, he came over here, and now obviously it's his home turf. So there's something brewing with the JS factory at the moment. Like, they've added Robbo to the stable, so they've got a, big name Aussie in the mix as well. And I look for JS to keep improving. They'll be on the up and up this year.
It's such a good one because Mitch Salazar and I would talk about them constantly over the last few years when we're doing this program, and it's like the team they had at JS that was like post CT, and it's like Aki, Joel, Ace, Luke, Julian, Ryan Callanan now, and it's like, I'm like, this has got to be the best non-CT team on the planet. And it was huge. And it was funny, Sam Zubovich and the crew over there were so fired up about this year. And JS is like, I'm going to the events. Like, we're making a real run here. And it's just cool to see. It's cool to see that competition. And as you mentioned, like Samuel, I think when he got knocked off at Margaret River and went to the gold, I think he won that Challenger Series event. And so, he's sitting 5th on the rankings, I think, right now. He could be a huge threat coming out of the Gold Coast.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Outside the top 5, you mentioned the Cabiancas. They've been so unique in terms of build. They've been beefier. They've had kind of bigger rails. They got a lot of foam. Gabe is like a super strong guy, and so he doesn't have a problem moving it around. I don't know if it's just the optical illusion of having the really cool rail spray at the moment. They look a little bit sleeker to me under Gabby, and Gabby himself looks a little bit leaner than he's looked the last few years. Again, you probably had a closer look than I did over the WA event. Is that true, or is it just sort of the rail thing that's throwing me off?
Well, it could also be there's no sticker on the nose.
Could be.
There's so many things you hear from surfers who've been sponsored their whole life and then lose a sponsor that they have to readjust to looking down and seeing a blank board. There's so much that goes on in your head around the optics of things, but I didn't notice anything about Gabby's boards that were different. I, like everyone, was looking out to see whether he was going to ride CIs. And
sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does on the Gold Coast, but I just feel like the synergy he's had with his Cabiancas, they're pretty perfect for WA to begin with. So why change a winning formula at an event like Margs? It's pretty hard to get dialed in, and he's obviously spent a lot of time dedicating himself to doing so. But yeah, maybe the Gold Coast will be where he unsheaths the Santa Barbara's finest blades.
Maybe. I do know that Johnny Cabianca has reached out. He is going to be on the Gold Coast. I know that Britt and Brent will be there. Maybe there'll be like a meeting of the minds. It'll work out for everybody there. Also collecting points on the rankings, even though they're outside the top 5. We saw Timmy Patterson, performances from Idolo Ferreira. And then TNC Surf, Glenn Pang, Katie Simmers. Now, Katie, 2024 Women's World Champion, famously has ridden for Chris Borst out of Borst Designs, San Diego, for the bulk of her career. This year, though, we've seen her ride both Sharp Eyes and the Pangs out in WA. She went back and forth a little bit. The way the rankings work is that it's the board that you won your last heat on. So she won her quarterfinal heat on a TNC Surf, switched it up to the Sharp Eye for her semifinals, lost out. So Pang gets those third place points. But, that just might be something like you're talking about where it's like the TNC surfboards, the Glen Pangs, they're made for heavy water waves in Hawaii. She maybe felt comfortable on those and sort of the size out at Margaret River.
It's also coach's corner. Like Tommy Witts and Jake Patterson have ridden Pangs in Hawaii religiously for years.
Right.
And, you can bet if Jake's your coach or if Tom's your coach, one will turn up. Yeah, maybe try this. And, Katie's Pang looked great. I back that. The Idolo one's funny. I surfed with him during the week of lay days. Had a good chat with him, and he, not many people in WA ride epoxies, even recreational surfers. Maybe in Perth where the waves aren't anywhere near as powerful or whatever, but down here it's like PU's 90% of the lineup. But Idolo he's 90% of the time on an epoxy, even in places like WA. And he was saying he just breaks so many boards. He told me a story about breaking 25 or something one winter in Hawaii, just doing his ridiculous airs. But he will even sometimes get his epoxies glassed heavier just so that they feel a bit closer to a PU and they're still that little bit more indestructible. He breaks them as much doing airs as he does having waves land on his head. But yeah, it's crazy that he's such a differently wired beast that he can surf on a board that's completely different to what everyone else is doing and, draw these different lines and go absolutely crazy.
That's a great point. Going in cold, surfer agnostic, who are going to be the board builders that are going to win on the Gold Coast? What's your prediction?
I mean, Samuel Pupo has won at Snapper before and he's looking elite. I think the JS has just got something going on. Robbo hasn't had the best start to the year. He's from here, but obviously lives on the Gold Coast these days. It feels like a kind of coming home moment being back on JS boards. He's been hanging out surfing a lot with Parko. He's obviously a maestro out at Snapper. And if it's barreling, and he's got the whole support crew there, JS and that whole gang will be right behind him. I think those two guys could do something pretty special for the tractor team.
Fair enough. And I always like to ask our co-hosts this. What have you been riding lately, Chris?
Well, coming out of summer, I've been riding a TNC, a Pang, the Saint, as a 20, just out the front at Big Fat Yelling Up main break from kind of every day, to the point where I struggle to get off it now. I love it. But now it's winter. I'm, starting to pull out I've got a CI flyer, OG flyer, and actually picking up a new JS when I get to the Gold Coast later on this week.
Good for you, man. We're going to take one more quick break to get another word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to answer listener questions. So don't go anywhere.
All right, welcome back to the Lineup Podcast. I'm Chris Binns here with Dave Prodan, and it looks like we've got a couple of Instagram questions from the folks at the the lineup pod on Instagram. First one is for you, Dave. It's from Lonnie Coco. What does Sawyer Lindblad need to do to continue climbing the rankings to the final five? Does the final five even exist anymore?
Final five, not in the traditional sense, but to the top five, you can be in the top five, no worries. Sawyer Lindblad, well, I mean, good start. She's a goofy footer, so that helps. But yeah, trajectory-wise, she started at Bell's with the 17th, went to Margaret's and got a 3rd. So she's on the right, trajectory anyways. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like what we were talking about throughout the episode. Every surfer in both the men's and women's field is so good that it is tough. It's tough just to get through heats. I'm going to pull up the heat draw, though. Let's see here for the Gold Coast event, and we can speculate. Sawyer Lindblad. Okay, so she's not out of that first round yet. She's not seeded directly into round 2, and she has wildcard Dimity Stoyle. Not an easy draw. Dimmy's been on the CT before. She's like a snapper local at the moment, and good forecast though. Sawyer spends a bit of time on the Gold Coast. I think, she spends a bit of time with Ethan Ewing on the Gold Coast. He's no slouch out there. So I think she's going to have the sandbar kind of dialed. I think her backhand is so good. And then on top of that, if she gets a result on the Gold Coast, the next event's going to be on her forehand in New Zealand. So, yeah, nothing specific, but I think she's kind of a threat in all conditions, and I'm sure she's going to take a lot of confidence coming out of WA. But, Binnsy, you're on the ground there. Did you see anything out of Sawyer that maybe we didn't catch on the broadcast that might get a little bit better insight to that question?
Yeah, I surfed with her quite a bit, actually. There was a lot of free surfing that went down that week off at the places that are a little bit more protected from the howling winds. She just looks like she's growing into the tour, like she's more confident, more self-assured, and her confidence around the heats and the self-belief is growing. That backhand is dynamite. It's an interesting one, that heat with Dimity. Dimity is a tube hound of the highest order, and she's got a big forehand hack on her. But if it's barreling, maybe you think a little bit of advantage to the natural footer. But if it's just steep and crackable, Sawyer, if she gets the hook going, Dimity's going to have her work well and truly cut out for her. And then I can't wait for Raglan, because it's a rippable left. And it brings such a new dimension to the tour that's probably the one lacking area in the year-long roster. I'm obviously biased, but the year that the CT came to Rottnest and we had a rippable left, no one's saying Strickland Bay is the best wave in the world, but to have a wave, the lefts traditionally on tour are big South Pacific heaving tubes over shallow coral reefs. But to have something you can rip apart, there were days at Rottnest that Iago made it look like the Maldives. Italo and Gabby did some of the biggest alley-oops you'll ever see. And Raglan, I think we're in for a bit more of that. I'm completely on a tangent here, but I can't wait to see Morgan Siblick on his backhand at Raglan. But I also don't think it's going to be advantageous one way or the other. That's a left where the naturals and the goofies will both be blazing. So looking forward to seeing Sawyer in a different kind of wave on her forehand, get to open the shoulders and throw some heat.
I love it. Who else we got for the question spins?
Oh, okay, hang on. I've completely lost my notes here. Okay. Matt C. Bass. How can two surfers have the same coach?
Well, the short answer, I guess, is just economics, really. I think, doing the championship tour is not cheap. It's a global tour. We travel to some pretty remote locations. It's airlines and hotels and food and, just salaries, per diems, whatever you got. And so I think what you see on tour is it's an interesting kind of symbiosis between the coaches and the surfers. And I think a lot of the surfers kind of aggregate in different camps, and the coaches sometimes are, they have agency too in terms of who they want to work with. Maybe they don't want to work with everybody, but I think what you'll see is more often than not, a lot of coaches will have a stable of surfers, whether it's, Richard Dog Marsh, Tom Whitaker, Luke Egan. Some of them only like having one. Some of them like to have a few. And it is interesting because I think, when you and I started Binns, the coaching thing probably wasn't as prevalent as it is in the year of our Lord 2026. It was, people probably hung more so with either their countrymen, or more often than not at the time, they hung out with like their main sponsors, which were kind of the big endemic sponsors at the time, the Billabong team or the Quicksilver team or the Hurley team. And that was more of a function of people kind of just hanging out at the house that the sponsor had. And these days, I think you see people kind of congregate more towards, they're either working with their surfboard shaper, so they're hanging out with the other people on the team that ride those boards because they're getting a lot of real-time feedback on equipment. But more often than not, you see like a really cool mix of surfers with different coaches, and it is cool to see them hang out. And so a long-winded response, but yeah, you probably will see it more often than not. Coaches will work with multiple surfers, and then sometimes, as we've seen kind of frequently for the first two events, is that coach will see two of their surfers draw one another. Hopefully it's in the final, like we've seen in WA, but sometimes it's in round two and you're going to see friendly fire.
On that note, the Shaper rankings have been such a great addition. Just a fantastic thread to add to the fabric of the tour. When are we going to get the coaching table? Like the planer as a trophy, unbelievable. You guys have nailed it. Let's bring out the clipboard and the whistle and do it, because for starters, it's hard to keep on top of who's actually coaching who. There's so much bed swapping, in the off season.
Right.
We see Micro steps away for a year and some of his surfers go elsewhere, and then he steps back in, and it's like, well, have they moved on or have they not? Jake Patterson through the pandemic stepped back, started working full-time, playing golf full-time and then working around that. And then he's come back into the fold and first started with his QS stable again, and now that he's brought some of them back to the CT, he's got them. But yeah, it's hard to keep on top of who's with who. But I would love to see the coaching rankings. That would be wicked.
That's probably the biggest barrier to why I can't do it. I have a hard enough time keeping up with the surfboards. I'm downloading the high-res image of Katie Simmers and trying to find the logo and figuring out where it is. But it would be maybe an honor system for the coaches. I'll have to have everyone self-report.
I loved seeing the Gabrielle O'Brien Soil Inblad heat where Glenn Hall and Taj were the coaches, and they just stood next to each other and were just talking shit the whole way through it. Like, there was no opposite ends of the podium, like clipboards and, notes and codes and waving flags and whistling and stuff. It was just two blokes telling jokes to each other, and it was cool.
I love it. I think it's like they fill quite a good entertainment role as well. Like, I'd put the shapers in there too. Like, they don't have to be as, maybe like we talked about Iago being very statesman-like as a world champion, which is great. It doesn't always lend itself to kind of incendiary comments, right? Where, you get the shapers and they're willing to go at each other's throats. Same with the coaches a bit, because a lot of them are ex-surfers as well. So, you know what? If in 2027, we've got the golden clipboard on the dais waiting for Coach of the Year, we'll track back to this exact question and this exact podcast as saying it started here.
Let's do it. All right. I think this question's actually left over from the last episode, but I saw it in the notes and I wouldn't mind riffing on it anyway. So, Dane Ladd says, do you think alternative boards have a place on the World Tour?
I'm happy to riff on this again. I think everyone can go back a couple episodes and hear my answer, see how consistent I am. But speaking as someone who doesn't actually have to wear a jersey, and I don't have the pressure of putting, a Ferrari under my feet and stakes on the board, and I love watching the CT surfers ride stuff that's a little bit outside the box. I mean, you can go back to, Wardo riding a round nose fish, or Kelly riding the Wizard Sleeve or the Deep Six, and Dane riding the MTFA, even Felipe's world title. Tom Curran, like even Felipe's world title, on the Sharp Eye, carbon vacuum quad, I think doesn't get talked about enough. And it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, of course, I appreciate that, like, the world's best surfers need to keep, their Ferrari or their blade as sharp as possible in any and all conditions. But I don't know, man, occasionally you want to see an F1 driver get behind a Subaru Outback and see what it does. And not that they're not performance capable. I think some of these like 2+1s and these performance fishes can do almost everything you need to do in certain conditions, and then they just have the added benefit of speed and drawing different lines, which I think is a scoring advantage. But again, caveat being, I don't have to go out there and do it. As a fan, I'd like to see it. But what are your thoughts on this, Binnsy?
Well, I think alternative boards is not necessarily the best term. And I don't want to be a hippie here, but like alternative medicine could easily be called complementary medicine, and it might not have that kind of stigma where it's like, oh, I have to start using this soap and doing this, that, and the other. Alternative boards, let's just call them slightly different boards, like the quad, like you gave the example of. ASIM surfboards, they're not some like wave your hands in the air and style down the line. They're as high performance as it gets, but some people see them and probably like turn away because they're like, wait, I don't like it. I loved Kelly Slater in Stab in the Dark talking about twin fins, saying that because we were on single fins for so long and then twins for just a short period of time before the thruster came along, the twin fin development arc hadn't been completed, and there's still design upgrades and improvements that can come with twin fins, and twin fins are fast and they fly down the line, and if your rail shape's right in the tail, you can rip a turn on them, and like, why shouldn't you play around with that? And then the quad's not massively removed from the 20. So does it have a place on the world tour? In the right conditions, sure. And maybe that was Kelly's driving motive towards the end of his career, was challenging himself and trying these other boards. But yeah, as you said, Felipe won a world title on a quad and no one really blinked an eyelid. So if a quad's an alternative board, then clearly they do have a place.
There's a joke in there about, alternative boards, and maybe we give everyone like a crystal to charge up in the corner as well. But I'm with you, man. Like I'd love to see it in a few places. I think the wave pools, like just having sat there and watched so many waves in Lemoore, I haven't been out to Abu Dhabi yet, but it's the same technology. And like I've seen Felipe on like a little 2+1 there performance fish, and it's like the best I've ever seen anyone surf. I think a wave like Raglan with a big slopey face, like that's another one where you could see someone ride something a little bit different, slightly different. Maybe we're updating the name, but yeah, I like the insights there. Well, before you go,
is Abu Dhabi the last event like after the snip and before pipe?
First post-snip event before Portugal. Portugal is the last one before everyone goes back to America.
Maybe that's where you and I need to go to present the golden clipboard.
Okay. Well, this is good. I like seeding the idea.
Don't ask, you don't get.
I guess. Yeah, we'll monitor, global news for a bit and see if these situations happening. Well, before you go, Binns, I like that we had that extra question in there from last time, because we got a bonus question from our last co-host, Mr. Harrison Roach. And so Harrison San asks, how many naps did Binnsy take during the lay days in WA?
Not many daytime naps. The days were pretty full. There was a pretty busy dance card. I hosted a couple of movie nights. I was working doing some stuff with Ace and Micro with a little project they've got called Haven that's kicking off at the moment. And there was a lot of surfing that went down, and I have a small child who is a limitless bundle of energy, but I was going to bed early. So yeah, not many naps, but I was making my sleep count, because also living in Yallingup, it's a 45-minute drive to the event every day. So yeah, throw an hour and a half of driving in either side of a 28 heat day, and that's a recipe.
Well, Chris Binns, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for breaking down the Western Australia Margaret River Pro. Safe travels to the next events. The Bonsoy Gold Coast Pro starts in just a couple of days. The banks look great. Fanning's claiming they're in really good shape, and the forecast looks pretty good, knock on wood. So can't wait to see the world's best coming up here. And yeah, I hope you come back real soon to the lineup, man.
Perfect. All right. Always a pleasure, Dave.
Thanks, buddy.